3 F-22 Raptors sliced through the high clouds, their radar locks fixed on an aging civilian jet. Silver-skinned, scuffed gliding like a forgotten relic suspended in twilight. "Ma'am, reduce altitude or we'll use force," came the clipped, confident voice over comms. A smirk followed. "Looks like Grandma's playing Top Gun today." Inside the weathered cockpit, the woman did not flinch. Her hands steady, her eyes calm, like someone who'd been targeted before in ways no radar could detect. They thought she was lost. They had no idea the very aircraft they mocked once silenced an entire battlefield. And the pilot at its helm. She'd once made history. Then stepped quietly away. Then she spoke, her voice low, even, unafraid. "Viper Flight. This is Captain Alara Quinn. Call sign, Pale Hawk." And just like that, the sky went still. In a world that shouts, would you recognize the one soul the heavens still bow to, by name alone? Not long ago, they would have cheered when her name came through the comms. But time has a way of erasing quiet legends, especially the ones who never asked to be remembered. Captain Alara Quinn. Call sign, Pale Hawk. A name passed down in whispers through military ready rooms. A name once etched into the margins of classified reports. But to most, she was just another aging pilot in a civilian shell, her story folded into silence like so many forgotten pages. She had walked away from the uniform a decade ago, voluntarily without bitterness. No parade, no headline, only a single photograph tucked inside a storage box. And a war record sealed behind top-level clearance as if her heroism were too dangerous to name. Since then, she'd kept to the skies. Not for prestige, not for nostalgia, but because at 30,000 feet the world stopped asking her to be anything other than whole. Her aircraft, a restored L-39 Albatross, was her only companion. An outdated jet patched by her own hands, its scars matching hers. It wasn't fast by today's standards, nor did it carry the tech of modern fighters. But it flew clean, honest, unafraid. Up here, Alara was weightless. The gravity of old wounds couldn't reach her. Neither could the questions. Some pilots fly to escape something. Alara flew because it was the only place that didn't hurt. They called her Grandma, laughed at the creaks of her jet. But these young men in Raptors, they didn't know who had taught their instructors how to evade missile lock. Didn't know that their very flight manuals were built on tactics she had once written in fire across the sky. Years ago, during Operation Iron Veil, a mission so classified it didn't officially exist. Alara had faced 12 hostile fighters alone. She didn't just survive, she reversed the outcome. She saved 68 lives and disappeared from the narrative by morning. Because some victories don't fit neatly into press releases. Now, sitting behind the controls of her aging bird, staring into the eyes of a new generation through layers of cockpit glass. She waited, not in fear, not in pride, just quiet readiness, like the sky itself had paused to see what she would do next. And far below, an old frequency began to stir, as word of Pale Hawk's voice reached ears that hadn't heard it in a decade. But those weren't the only ones listening. The moment Pale Hawk identified herself, something shifted not just in the cockpits of the F-22s, but in the rhythm of the sky itself. A silence settled over the frequency, thick electric, as if the very clouds were holding their breath. Inside, his Raptor Lieutenant Dean Marlowe blinked hard, the call sign still echoing in his headset. "Pale Hawk, that Pale Hawk." His hands trembled slightly on the throttle, a subconscious response that no amount of training could suppress. He switched to the squadron's encrypted channel. "Viper 2, Viper 3. Did she say what I think she said?" A pause. Then a whisper, "It can't be. She's not even supposed to be alive, let alone flying." But she was. Flying solo, in an aircraft older than most of their careers, and without raising her voice, she had just disarmed an entire intercept unit. There had always been stories, told in low tones during night briefings. About a lone pilot who during Operation Iron Veil had turned 12 enemy fighters into ghosts using tactics so daring, so unorthodox that the after-action logs were buried deep under blackout clearance. They called her the woman who flew like mist, impossible to pin, impossible to forget. But most young pilots thought it was just myth, a fable passed down by older instructors, until now. In the L-39, Ilara let the silence stretch. She had learned long ago that silence was a weapon when held correctly. She didn't reach for the radio again, didn't try to explain herself. She just flew steady like a stone skipping across still water. Outside her canopy, she could see the Raptors shifting formation, no longer circling, no longer aggressive. They were watching. One of them, the lead, nudged his aircraft closer. Marlowe keyed his mic, his voice quieter now, unsure. "Captain Quinn, if I may, what you did back there, that wasn't in any manual." Ilara gave a soft exhale, a smile ghosting her lips. "The manuals were written after we survived, Lieutenant, not before." Seconds later, the command frequency came alive. "Viper flight, disengage intercept. Maintain respectful escort. You are flying beside confirmed legend, Pale Hawk. Act accordingly." The order, sharp and laced with urgency, came from Skywatch Command higher than their chain. Marlowe's jaw locked. His arrogance had evaporated. In its place, something unfamiliar shame tempered by awe. They had mocked her, and now they were flying in her shadow. "Ma'am," Marlowe said again, this time on a private pilot-to-pilot channel, "I want to apologize for what I said earlier about Top Gun and, well, you were young at altitude." Ilara replied, voice even almost kind. "We've all said stupid things up here. The trick is not to let them define us." Her words didn't chastise. They lifted. Marlowe hesitated, then asked, "Is it true, ma'am, what they say about Operation Iron Veil, that you were alone, that you saved 68 lives?" Ilara paused. The number still sat in her chest like a pulse that never slowed. 68 names, not written in books, but carried still. She didn't confirm it outright. She didn't need to. Instead, she said quietly, "Sometimes, Lieutenant, we don't fight to win. We fight to delay losing until everyone else can get home." There was a long, weighted silence. Then a new voice, cut in female, measured respectful. "Captain Quinn, this is Major June Herrera, Viper 3. Permission to ask a tactical question, ma'am." Ilara raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." "How do you make 12 fighters believe they're fighting an entire squadron when there's only one of you?" Ilara's voice didn't waver. "You don't fight 12 aircraft, Major. You fight 12 pilots, and fear when aimed well travels faster than any missile." Far below ground control scrambled to reroute surrounding airspace. Pilots from neighboring squadrons began requesting entry to the zone. Rumors were moving faster than radar, and somewhere deep inside a forgotten bunker, a redacted file was being opened, for the first time in 10 years. The legend had returned to the sky, and not everyone was ready for what that meant. Ilara hadn't intended to teach anyone that day. She hadn't intended to be seen. But reverence has a way of spreading, especially among those raised on stories they were never meant to confirm. The Raptors held formation now, not as predators, but as students. Beside her in the sleek cockpit of his F-22, Lieutenant Marlowe stared straight ahead, his voice softer on the shared frequency. "Ma'am, I can't stop thinking about it. That mission, Operation Iron Veil. They say you flew for 40 minutes with a torn fuel line and shrapnel in your leg, and you still—" He stopped himself. Ilara said nothing for a while. The sky was quiet warm against her canopy, the kind of quiet only a storm respects before it breaks. Then she replied, "The pain was the easy part. The hard part was knowing there wasn't anyone coming to help, that it was just me, and what I did or failed to do would decide whether 68 souls lived or died." Major June Herrera spoke again, her voice now tinged with something deeper than curiosity, something like reverence wrapped in disbelief. "Ma'am, how did you even start? I mean, Tactically, what's the first thing you do when you're outnumbered 12-1? Ilara smiled softly, more to herself than to them. You make the sky lie for you. She let the sentence hang like vapor across the fuselage. Make them think they're fighting 12 of you, not 1. There was a beat of radio silence. Then Marlowe murmured, almost like a child recalling a bedtime story. The Phantom Squadron technique? Ilara nodded. False radar echoes, shadow loops, angular displacement across multiple bands, just enough confusion to make their sensors blink twice. But none of it works if your heart's not steady. If you don't believe in your bones that you belong in that fight. She paused, her voice shifting from tactical to timeless. Because aerial combat isn't about domination. It's about belief, and belief can make a single aircraft feel like a whole damn war. The Raptors flew quietly in her wake, their million-dollar systems humming silently beside her analog pulse. Modernity had surrounded her, but had not diminished her. Ma'am, what if you're not sure you belong up there anymore? The question wasn't about her, it was about him. A crack in the armor. Ilara didn't rush to answer. That's when you fly anyway, she said, and you let the sky decide. From below, new radar contacts lit up. 2 F-35 Lightnings approaching fast, and with them an older F-16 trailing behind. Captain Quinn came a graveled voice on the frequency. Older, slower, familiar somehow. This is Echo 7, requesting to join formation. If you'll have us. Lara blinked. She hadn't heard that voice in over a decade. Sam, she whispered. Been waiting 10 years for a chance to fly beside you again. She looked left, then right, surrounded by 5th-generation stealth fighters all tracking her position like planets to a quiet sun. No one was giving orders, they just followed. Because some gravity isn't issued, it's earned. Ilara took a long breath, then keyed the channel. All aircraft. Maintain safe distance, but keep up if you can. And with that, she dipped the nose of her L-39 upward, climbing gently through the mid-level clouds. The old trainer groaned slightly in the wind, but held its line true, precise, unafraid. Around her, 6 combat jets rose in quiet deference. They hadn't come to escort her anymore. They had come to learn. And somewhere beyond radar range, other pilots were already tuning in, drawn by a single call sign whispered across the sky like a hymn. The sky remembered her. Now the world was starting to. The escort formation held steady, 6 jets in a loose arc behind the weathered L-39. To an observer from the ground, it would have looked absurd, like a procession of wolves following an old wounded deer. But up here, above rules and ranks, it made perfect sense. More requests came through. Pilots from distant squadrons, some young, some long since grounded, asking to enter the corridor. As if hearing her call sign had unlocked something long buried in them. Not duty. Not nostalgia. Something quieter. Something holy. A voice broke through, unfiltered and raw. Captain Quinn, this is Colonel Thorne. Command Air Operations. We've just received word from 3 additional aircraft requesting to join your airspace. 2 Lightnings and a Falcon from the 114th. Your call. Ilara stared ahead, her breath, still her heart, unexpectedly full. The 114th. The unit she once called family, the one she'd disappeared from without goodbye, the one that had never stopped waiting. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she watched the sky. The clouds had begun to open into that rare cobalt hue, the kind that only reveals itself when the sun is low and the wind is right. It was the color she remembered from that day. The day everything changed. She hadn't planned to survive. 12 enemy fighters, 1 failing jet. Bleeding into her harness, flying with a vision that blurred with every heartbeat. But she'd stayed. Not because she believed she could win, but because 68 lives hung in the silence behind her, and she was the last voice between them and goodbye. Captain Quinn came the voice again, this time older, richer. Gravely. Familiar. Permission to fly beside you, ma'am. She knew it. Elias Monroe, her old wing commander. Long retired. He was in the Falcon. A pause stretched like a breath before a prayer. Then another voice cut through, younger, soft-spoken. "Ma'am. With respect, we don't fly today to protect you. We fly because we were shaped by the shadow you left behind." Alara closed her eyes briefly, not from emotion, but from recognition of what was being offered and what it would cost. She had lived a long time behind the veil of quiet, not hiding, just choosing peace over pageantry, choosing solitude over spectacle. Now the sky was giving her a different choice, not to return, but to be seen, not as Pale-Hawk the legend, but as Alara Quinn the pilot, whose silence had become a form of guidance. She clicked the frequency. "All aircraft, this is Pale-Hawk. If you're flying for nostalgia, turn back. If you're flying to be part of something you can't explain yet, maintain altitude. Follow me in." A pause. Then 20 affirmative responses one by one, filling the frequency like slow piano keys pressed in dusk. They weren't here for a mission. They were here for meaning. And Alara, she chose to let them. She banked her L-39 to the west, rising with the late afternoon light. The aircraft behind her mirrored the motion with reverence, not synchronization, but alignment. No one gave a command. No one claimed leadership. This wasn't a squadron. It was a constellation. And down below, in a dusty corner of Gray Ridge Air Base, an old photograph had been pulled from a file drawer. In it, a woman in flight suit leaning against a scratched L-39, eyes steady. The caption beneath the photo had faded over time, but someone had written 2 words across the corner in pen. She stayed. In the next hour, she would do more than fly. She would teach the sky how to remember. They didn't fly in formation. They flew in memory. As if each jet behind her was a chapter of something not yet written, all circling the same quiet center. Alara didn't speak for a long while. She let the sound of the engines fill the air, a choir of burn and breath behind her. This wasn't a tribute. It was a conversation, silent, sacred, between generations of pilots who had once believed the sky belonged only to the fast and the young, but today proved something else. That legacy has wings, and they don't rust. The tower at Gray Ridge crackled into her headset. "Captain Quinn, the base commander would like a word. She's requesting your presence." Alara sighed gently, not out of reluctance, but because she knew this moment was coming. Not the invitation, the return. The base had been her crucible, and her escape. Now it would become something else, her classroom. 2 days later, she stood before a room of faces that hadn't yet known real fear. Young, brilliant, untested, but wide open. They'd heard the story by now. Whispers become waves in aviation. At the front row sat Lieutenant Marlowe, spine straight, eyes focused, all traces of swagger stripped away. Beside him, Major Herrera, and behind them 36 others, all waiting to understand the woman whose name had once frozen a squadron mid-air. Alara didn't start with theory. She didn't draw tactics on the screen. She told them what mattered. "Flying is not combat," she said. "Combat flying isn't about speed or tech. It's about pressure, confusion, clarity under fire, and the decisions you make when no one's coming to help." A hand rose. "Ma'am, how do you know which rules to break in the middle of that chaos?" Alara looked at the cadet not with challenge but with quiet grace. "You don't break them," she said. "You transcend them. Chaos gets you killed. But improvisation keeps you breathing just long enough to figure out why you're still here." She paused. "Most of what I did that day wasn't about bravery. It was about refusing to let fear do the thinking." They leaned forward now, not in awe but in shared human hunger for understanding. Marlowe raised his hand slowly. "The Phantom Squadron tactic." "Can it be taught?" Alara offered the faintest smile. "The maneuver, yes. The judgment to use it, that's earned, usually alone. At altitude, when you're just scared enough to forget yourself, and just steady enough to save everyone else." Behind them, the wind tapped gently at the windows as if the sky itself had paused to listen. Captain Herrera spoke up. Ma'am, do you regret not staying in the system command? Recognition. All of it. Alara stepped aside, letting them see the photograph on the screen behind her. The old L-39 trailing vapor like a relic surrounded by Raptors. They gave me a call sign, she said. But the sky gave me a purpose. And sometimes, that's more than enough. That night, the base hosted a quiet gathering. No banners, no anthems. Just the slow pour of coffee, the hum of distant hangars, and the quiet murmur of 3 generations of pilots speaking as equals. Some had fought beside her. Others had nearly shot her down. And the rest, they would carry her story forward. Alara sat beneath the open stars, her boots planted on old concrete, her back to the warm light of the hangar. She didn't say much, but she noticed it the way the younger ones looked at her now, not like a legend, like a compass, and quietly somewhere inside something in her settled, not into stillness, but into place. In the distance, the silhouette of her L-39 waited on the tarmac, its canopy reflecting stars, its frame tired but ready. Tomorrow she would fly again. Not to be remembered, but simply because the sky still opened for her, and somewhere overhead, just out of sight, new wings were learning how to follow. 6 months later, Alara stood once more beneath a vaulted sky, this time at the Air Force Academy. Behind her, projected onto a screen framed in soft morning light, was a still image. Her weathered L-39 haloed by Raptors and lightnings climbing gently toward the sun. A frozen moment. But those who had flown it remembered the warmth. Before her sat the graduating class, young, sharp, breathless for what came next. But today they weren't being taught maneuvers. They were being given something else. Alara stepped forward. "What makes a call sign endure?" she asked. A cadet replied confidently, "Skill. Victories. Flight hours." Alara smiled gently, shaking her head. "That's what makes a pilot competent. But a call sign that lingers. One spoken in silence. That comes from something deeper." She let the silence sit for a moment, then turned toward the window. Beyond it, rows of sleek jets shimmered in the heat. But in her eyes the sky remained the same, endless, open, forgiving. "You earn a call sign like that." She continued, not by chasing it, but by forgetting it exists and choosing the mission again and again, especially when no one sees, no one thanks you, and the sky feels very cold. A young woman in the back rose quietly. "Ma'am, do you believe the sky remembers?" Alara paused. Then it never forgets. Not the quiet victories, not the impossible choices, and not the names spoken in reverence when the radios go still. That evening she walked alone to the tarmac. The same L-39 waited in silence, faded, imperfect, but faithful. As she climbed into the cockpit, the base tower crackled gently. "Pale Hawk, you are cleared for departure." "Safe skies, Captain." Lara didn't respond right away. She just smiled. The kind of smile that belongs to someone who gave more than she kept and somehow still has flight left in her. The engine hummed. Wheels turned. And the old bird lifted graceful as ever into a sky that had been waiting, not for the legend, but for the woman. If this story reminded you of someone who once chose purpose over praise, someone who gave quietly without needing to be seen, share it with them, because the sky remembers, and maybe they need to know that we do too.